Hello, welcome to my home after a few weeks apart. I missed you all a lot. I hope that wherever you are ready for a great Christmas. It is just around the corner. Today we have a very special conversation, and it is a great time to have it indeed. A moment when tempers and passions have cooled down. And now we can think about a very important question. The title is, Do you have a voice or an echo? But basically, what kind of provocation is this title trying to create? Voice or echo? It means, do you have your own ideas? Or are you simply copying what you have heard around? So, it is an element I brought for us to have a little chat, to reflect a bit, because it is essential for you to know that it is not only to avoid being manipulated, but also because you came here with the fundamental purpose of building yourself. And this purpose involves having autonomy, having your own identity, building your own feelings, your own thoughts, your own actions. Being able to take responsibility for your actions in the world. It is mine. It was thought out. It was reflected upon. If it was poorly thought out, that is okay. I will learn from it and I will correct it. But it is mine. It was not a copy from anyone. I do not transfer the responsibility to anyone. I take the reins of my life. My thoughts are my own, whether they are mistaken or not. Because both are valid. If you are in a process of self-construction based on a mistaken thought, you learn just as much as you do from a correct thought. Learn and renew your stance. Just do not feel like you own the truth. So, here we have once again an important dichotomy. Not feeling like you own the truth and not being lazy to think. Many times I've mentioned to you in some of our conversations that the worst kind of laziness is mental laziness. We often struggle with the one that does not get us out of bed in the morning. Okay, laziness must vanish in all levels. But that is not the manifestation. The root, it is not where it originates. Laziness is born in the mental realm. It leads to inattention, distraction, a constant habit of seeing what everyone else is thinking to ride the same wave. Always adopting ready-made ideas, always being on trend. This element is what projects itself into denser levels, making us a marked card, repeated in the deck of life. We do not say what we came for, and this does not just harm us, it also harms humanity. And this is exactly the point we'll start discussing today regarding this human puzzle. An interesting thing, imagine that we are. I mean, all of us part of a one, of a unity, of a cosmos. That we are not the same kind. It is as if the universe has split like a puzzle, where part of the mystery of the line is in each of the units that have broken apart. A body wouldn't be the same if it were missing a single cell. The universe is not the same when it's missing a single being, who did not assume their role, who did not do what was theirs to do. Now, look closely, we are the only beings that we know of so far who have this freedom not to fulfill their role. No plant rebels against its nature as a plant, nor does an animal against its animal nature. Man, having reflective consciousness, has the capacity to choose, and suddenly, he chooses not to be human. It is inert like a stone, greedy like a plant, seeking energies, or instinctive like an animal. And its human development remains unfinished. We end up being a Frankenstein from Mary Shelley. A piece of everything. None of these pieces truly belong to us. So think in individual terms, but also think in terms of society. Something is missing in the world when a human being fails to take their place. As Marcus Aurelius said, the loss of a single human being, whom I did not know, means a universe, unique and unrepeatable, with whom I failed to make contact. A missing piece of this puzzle will make it less beautiful, less harmonious. The universe harmonizes, planet Earth harmonizes, the humanity we know harmonizes, each one occupying their place, everything fits together. Everything flows. I have given you this example many times before, that beauty is a clear example of this. Beauty is composed of the harmony of differences. You would not have a song with just one note, not even in music, one note samba truly has only one note. It harmonizes different notes, and a beautiful painting also harmonizes different colors. And from there, you have beauty. Beauty is the result of harmony of differences. Therefore, we do not find beauty in humanity. And consequently, we do not find happiness, we do not find fraternity if you, individually, have not found yourself. Try to see this idea. Having individuality is for yourself and for the world. All of nature expects this from you. It is a mystery that you came into the world to bring to light, the mystery of your own identity. It is that sacred word that Buddhism speaks of, which if you do not pronounce, no one can pronounce it for you. So, your identity is a mission. This is why we came, this is why we are in the world. And only this ensures the harmony of the whole. Do not let yourselves be dragged into this notion that, to avoid conflict, we all need to be the same, which is the argument of massification. If we are all the same, we will be half none, men divided in half, who have not found their own fullness. Consequently, men who are split in half are not happy. And a bunch of men who are not happy cannot succeed. It is like you were sick on earth and there was no doctor. Everyone just wants to receive and no one is willing to give. Logically, this won't work. So, formus, self-development, self-knowledge is indeed for you and also for humanity. It is indeed a fraternal work. Find yourself, that is what nature expects from you. According to Plato, who is a foundationally often used, there exists a realm of ideas where all ideas reside, even before humanity was created, even before the universe was manifested in the way we know it today. Things are born first as ideas, in the mental plane of nature, in the mental plane of God, if you prefer. This realm of ideas that Plato spoke of, when the material universe is created, these ideas begin to manifest down here. And logically, as these ideas descend, they encounter the resistance of matter and they undergo distortions, becoming imperfect. And evolution would be nothing more than chasing after that idea that gave you birth, to start to align with it in the best possible way. And this is what stones, plants, and animals do, guided by the laws of nature. Now, man, having a reflective consciousness and the capacity for free will, has the obligation to act for himself. Understand that there is a human idea and pursue it. And as one incorporates this human ideal, they become an increasingly worthy representative of this ideal in the world. A worthy representative of this idea in the world. In other words, he came into the world and did not stray from his original idea, which is the etymology of the word symbol. In other words, he was cast out of the world, but remained united with the idea that gave him origin. If not, he becomes divided. This division would be represented by the diabolos, meaning being split between two worlds. One thing is the very distorted reflection, and another is what nature expected of it. So, evolution is nothing more than striving to align with your celestial model. Often people ask me when I talk about mission, about ideals, but how will I find my ideal? I always give that answer, which I do not know if it is pleasing, but it is to me. I do not know if it seems that way to you. No one has to find their ideal. The human ideal has been conceived by nature since the dawn of time. The human ideal is to be human with values, virtues, and wisdom. Only we can bring this to the world. We know that if plants do not perform photosynthesis, the foundation of the food chain collapses and there is no life. Nature expects this from plants, expects animals to be effective in the perpetuation of their species, in their own survival. Otherwise, they go extinct and cease to fulfill their role. It is expected from humans to fulfill their role with values, virtues, and wisdom, to be a complete human being. It's like the pinnacle of a pyramid. You ascend there through various phases. Your professional nature, your vocation, whatever it may be. But the goal has been defined by nature since the beginning of time. If dear Plato was right or makes sense, it was defined even long before humans were created. So, evolution is about seeking a human model, striving for the fullness of the human condition. And the paths? Those, yes, you will seek out what the ideals are. However, do not forget the biblical phrase, by your works you shall be known. See if this path is truly good by the direction it is taking you. If it is bringing you closer to the pinnacle of the pyramid, it is good. If not, be careful. So, when we sometimes think, and I find this thought very fair and I should, that we must take care of nature. Because there are animals on the brink of extinction, we take care of the golden lion tamarin, of the pandaed bear, and many others within the world's fauna. What we realize is that it is not enough to care for these animals at this moment, if you do not also care for the extinction of human nature. Because what causes the extinction of forests, animals, flora, and fauna, which destroys the planet, is the extinction of the human condition. If you seek human beings in the fullness of their condition, with values, virtues, and wisdom, everything else will be given as an addition, as the Bible says once again. In other words, we will have to do a bit ecosophia, pursue to not let the fullness of the human condition become extinct. Because a true human being preserves the panda bear, preserves the golden lion tamarin, preserves the Amazon rainforest, preserves everything. Wow, preserve these animals. And let humanity become extinct. Because you will see what the next generation will do with these animals and all the others. Today we'll see certain things that are symptoms of barbarism. Certain behaviors that certain animal species would have, for example, shame of doing to their own offspring. Be careful, because this is a complicated symptom of animalization. And it is of no use preserving the animals if you do not preserve the human condition. This is an idle task. Preserving the human condition, returning to our original argument. First and foremost, it is about preserving yourself, with your characteristics, with your ideas, but without losing sight of the human ideal, which is the same for the entire human species. Therefore, this makes me better, it makes me more whole, it makes me more coherent, and it is necessarily a good thing for me. Do not let yourself be swept away by passions, by trends, even in the realm of identity. Many times we let ourselves be swept away. Many times we ask our young people at a very early on what they want to do with their lives when they still lack basic self-awareness. And what will they choose? By what is trendy, by what they saw in a movie, except in very rare cases of greater maturity, generally speaking. The young person there does not know much about themselves to decide what they will do for the rest of their life. So we continue, and sometimes even much older people, we follow trends and create an entire identity based on the collective, which does not correspond to anything, to what we would see as necessary to reach the fullness of the human condition. We follow social models. How many times, let's be honest here among us, do you talk to someone on the street, at work, anywhere, and get the impression that you are hearing for the 20th time the same version that is on social media, the same thing everyone is saying? In other words, you do not find a life of your own, you only find echoes. And that is very sad, because we keep searching for where there is a genuine human being, true to themselves, who is willing to reflect. When Gibran talks about conversation, this is one of the elements he addresses in his book, The Prophet, in the chapter on conversation. How sad it is, because it becomes an exchange of repeated stickers, there is nothing original. How isolated we become when we are not among people with their own ideas, with their own lives, starting with ourselves. It is a great silence, a great repetition of the same thing, in different tones of voice, but still the same. Continuing. I have already told you that in Eastern tradition, there is a certain definition, a certain concept, which is the idea of the inner name. They say that the purpose of human life is to be a bridge between heaven and earth. Each of us has the mission to take some of these ideas, which exist in the realm of ideas, and stamp them onto the world, bring them into the world. And this message, which others might not see with their own eyes, begins to be seen through our eyes. Every man who has a genuine human life is a pontiff. Their head is in the realm of ideas and their feet are on the earth. And through them, humanity can see things it would not see otherwise. So you might have someone who, one fine day, comes up to you and says, "Look, I was addicted to thinking like everyone else. But that day you told me that, look, you ruined my day. It made me rethink all my positions, turned my world upside down. Do not feel sorry for that person. You did them a great favor. You outed something different to their menu of options. And you proved to them that it is possible to have identity and individuality amidst the crowd. It is possible to find yourself, even if it is not the word of the day, even if it is not what everyone is seeking. I recall that many times I've given you an example, but something that happened in my life, which left a significant mark, was when my daughter was 5 years old, attending kindergarten, and in her music class, they had them perform a Bayan dance, which was very trendy at the time, extremely sensual. And I went on to explain that I did not want a 5-year-old child doing that. And the educational advisor told me that I would be harming my daughter because she would end up being different from the other children. Look, this was an educational advisor. And I was very startled to see the fear written all over her face. The fear of being different. I had to be very gentle and patient to explain to her that what I wanted most was for my daughter to have the ability to be different from everyone else when everyone else was wrong. It is not just about being contrary. If everyone is on the right path, great, I am with them. But if they are heading towards an abyss, one must have the courage to save oneself, even if it means doing so alone. And through your example, perhaps some will follow and save themselves as well. So, it is very important for us to realize that the fear of this person, who was a children's educational advisor, is very present in all of us. The fear of individuality. So we self-sabotage out of fear of being excluded from social groups, fear of loneliness, fear of aggression, of rejection. We practically forbid ourselves from setting a date with our own selves out of fear of the consequences. When, in reality, you'll realize that those people who are guided by social groups, who all think exactly the same, when faced with a major difficulty in life, won't find answers in those echoes surrounding them. They will seek those who think. They will seek you. You need to be clear in your mind about what you want to be remembered for. Do I want to be remembered as part of the happy hour crowd? Or do I want to be remembered as someone who has genuine opinions when someone needs them? This does not mean you won't join the happy hour, but perhaps you will need to find a group that shares that affinity. You do not distance yourself from people. You are just available for other things. And those who have a good conversation, who want to exchange genuine ideas, yes, those are the ones to join at the happy hour. Putting everything in its rightful place is the Platonic concept of justice. But I am available to everyone. Although in relation to. Sure from what I am, and not lower myself to reach them. There is a maxim from Eastern education that I find very interesting, which I always share in my lectures, which is what an educator should say to a student, a parent to their child. I should turn to them and say, to rise, always count on me, but to descend, go down alone. Do you realize that this is also what we need to have the courage to present to the social groups we participate in? Want to have a good conversation, want to reflect, want to find answers for your life. Always count on me unconditionally. Now, for massification, for repeating trendy catchphrases, no. Go alone or with those who enjoy that. And accept our position in the world. You will notice that this acceptance will make others admire you, who may also try to take a stand. And be respected for who they are. Respect, which comes from respicer, meaning to know how to see, to look again. It cannot be exercised towards others if, first and foremost, you do not exercise it towards yourself. Respect yourself, find yourself. And if you do not find what you need, build yourself. Start reflecting on each event in life and begin gathering, by destination, those things that you consider as part of your identity. Remember, we did not come into the world to build things. The universe did not need that. It does not need flying machines. The universe already built comets. It does not need things that are very fast. It already created the speed of light. It needs us to build ourselves, because that it cannot do. For this, there is a law called the law of free will. Therefore, it must respect our autonomy, even if we do not wish to exercise it. So, the great work is the construction of oneself. And with that, you contribute to yourself and to humanity, as we mentioned at the beginning, to conquer senses internally and see the marvelous reality behind the shadows. This is very interesting. I always use a phrase that seems a bit enigmatic, a bit nonsensical, but it actually makes perfect sense, which goes like this: the more inside, the more outside. If I am a person who increasingly seeks to find myself amidst the things that I am not, remember the definition of intelligence, intelliger, to choose among. To choose among the things that tell me who I am, who I really am, the more I seek to delve into my true nature, the more I delve into the nature of things outside, in the objects around me, in the realities around me. If I am superficial in relation to myself, I will be superficial in relation to all things. I know technically how they work, but I do not know what they are. I have the know-how, I know how, but I do not know why nor where to. And then we become utilitarian, knowing how to use things for our personal benefit, but not understanding things in depth. If we do not understand, first and foremost, ourselves, diving into realities and finding the mystery behind them is a very interesting practice, quite common. Once you acquire it, once you start to discipline yourself to look at things, seeking answers. The other day, I posted on my Facebook page that I left home and found the spotlight in front of my house, turned on in the morning, and it is a strong spotlight that with the sunlight, and mind you, it was morning light, still fragile, just beginning, it was dawn. That with the sunlight, it did not stand a chance. You couldn't even tell it was on. You had to look closely to notice if it was on or off. This is interesting because I stopped to think about this personal shine of vanities, of prides. When the sunlight is born, how they become nothing. And the sunlight, classically, according to Plato, is the idea of the good. All other elements lose their value when the dawn of the idea of good arrives within us. When we seek the good in everything, the right direction for each thing, the essence of things, this surpasses any personal interest. Then I would maneuver my car, and I started maneuvering and kept fumbling around, unable to find a position to get out. I looked at a certain moment and said, how many times throughout my day do I do this? I keep fumbling around and do not take a step towards the exit, the way out of my problems, a step towards my dreams. I keep fumbling around, getting very involved, but I do not move forward, not at all. What I found interesting about these two reflections, quite simple ones, after that, there were a few more, is that it was not even 8 o'clock in the morning. I had practically already made half a dozen philosophical reflections. Look, I am not some great philosopher, I am a learner. But this is a habit that you acquire. Looking at life and asking, what do you have for me today? What do you have to offer me? What can I want from you now? This allows you to have a deep dialogue with things, to have your body and mind together, as Jung would say, present in each moment, extracting what life has to teach you now, a pedagogical life. And this is a habit that is acquired when a person has the desire to know, when they have the desire to delve deeper, when they have a love for this mystery that is life. And from that, he begins to develop reflections that he did not clone from anywhere. They are his own, starting from his vision of reality, starting from his reflection. Of course, they are not perfect. It can be improved in the future, but you already have a core around which it is like a tree. It already has its trunk around which it will grow its canopy. This center is fundamental. None of us truly owns the truth, but by having a center, our real capacity for reflection and for learning, from it you start improving, establishing a learning process. If we have no reflection, we do not know what things are, nor do we have the curiosity to find out on what basis will we improve. Based on what others have said, and what if it is not? And what if it is just someone else's impression? What if it is just an opinion that soon becomes outdated? We ensure the foundation when it comes from our clear, unbiased observation, driven solely by the love of knowledge. You ensure the foundation. I studied logic for many years, and even today I really enjoy this discipline. It was one of the ones that taught me the most. Logic starts from a correct premise to establish a series of correct reasonings. Reasonings can be wonderful, but if your premise is false, you are building a castle in the air, you have nothing. So, The fundamental premise is I saw, I felt, I reflected, and I extracted this essence from life. From there, I can perceive more, but this foundation is solid, upon which I can build the edifice of my identity of the I am. And I am always under construction, always improving, but now it has an axis. It has roots. One of the things that is also repetitive in my lectures. I say, look, life will have difficulties, the wind will blow. And it is essential for you to know that when the wind blows, only the trees with deep roots survive. The others are swept away. Do not think that in your life, particularly, the wind won't blow. Wind is part of the planet's weather conditions, so it is going to blow. Create deep roots, dive the roots within yourself. The mystery of oneself within the mystery of life. Today, we have a curious habit of not thinking and seeking happiness from the sensory satisfaction that things can bring, which is not happiness. It is a very short-lived pleasure. It is not transformative. It is not unifying. It does not solve our problems. I always illustrate with the story of cinema. Everyone dramatizes. The actor goes through that dramatic situation, everyone crying on the set. Very intense emotions. 10 minutes later, those same people are eating popcorn in the food court. In other words, they are passions. They are fleeting emotions that come and go just as quickly. They are not built. They do not have a foundation in consciousness and will. Therefore, you do not retain one. They lack depth, but they give a taste. It is fun. One moment you are crying, the next you are laughing. It is entertaining. Look, emotions and dots are not entertainments. These are the tools, the building materials with which you will construct yourself. You cannot just use these tools, which were made for you to become a full human being, for a moment of pleasure. You cannot sell yourself for so little. I am not saying that every now and then you should not have a silly little emotion. I think that is part of it, but I am saying not to have just that. Work on building dude feelings. Work on building your own bots. Life is not a game. It is not a movie. It does have many painful moments, many pleasurable moments, that our duty cannot be abandoned. Remember that phrase from a philosopher I greatly admire, Sui Ram, who said, I walk towards my mission. If a gentle breeze blows, I delight myself in the gentle breeze. If it is scorching hot, I suffer with the scorching heat. Let neither one nor the other. Would take me off my path. Today we have no path. So we run away from the sun and chase after the breeze. It is a path without any meaning, which only brings anguish and emptiness. And we cannot stop to think, because we are afraid of this encounter with ourselves. So it is a constant escape from oneself, the favorite sport of today's society. There are countless external distractions, so that one never has to look within and notice this great emptiness of not even having started to build the foundations, the very base of your own identity. And it is incredible how society is entirely built upon us, even the wrongdoings. People know how naive others can be, and sometimes, with spurious arguments, they deceive a crowd of people, sometimes with absurd ideas. Just go on a social network and see, for example, absurd things that are posted under the names of Shakespeare or of Miguel de Cervantes. And thousands, sometimes millions of people shared it without stopping to realize that it is impossible for something like that, in contemporary language, without deep content, to have been written by William Shakespeare. And people, certainly from all cultural levels, went on sharing, sharing, sharing. No one along this path stopped to chew it over and see what could be learned from it. And said, no, this is not worthy of Shakespeare. It could not have been him. In other words, this urge to pass things along without reflecting, to toss them back and forth. A bunch of superficial elements, because even if they are not true, they provide some pleasure. It is curious, this, and it is one of the elements I find most intriguing. It is like that old saying, I do not know, I do not want to know, and I resent those who do know. Do you know what that means? I suspect that among those millions of people who pass something along without any basis, some suspect it is not true, but it gives them pleasure. It is a cute thing, a cheap self-help, but it looks good on the screen, fits well on your page. I suspect that some people have their doubts about the authorship of that they prefer not to know. It is like dealing with the gossip if you want to tell. For this person, the real version of events, they won't want to know because generally the real version is much less interesting than the gossip he made up. There is no love for the truth. There is love to an entertainment, a pastime. It would be quite incredible to imagine what a human being is like who does not love the truth, who does not love knowledge. In other words, he clings to the masks and wants the masks. We often remember that movie The Matrix about that guy who wanted to go back into the machine, even knowing it's an illusion. How many of us would like to know? How many of us would like to leave the machine? How many of us will see to return, even knowing it is an illusion? This disconnection of man from truth and knowledge, you realize that behind it lies the idea that I am capable of inventing things that are more interesting than the truth, even though I do not even know it. I am capable of inventing things more attractive, more mysterious than the truth. That is that I have never touched on the doors of truth. And there is nothing more mysterious or more attractive, because truths are about the universe and about ourselves. So there are a bunch of elements. An element that I included here in the sequence, which I find quite interesting as well. Consider that the inner world, we came to the world to manifest a bit of the realm of ideas into the concrete realm. It would be as if we are the love through which the hand of the divine acts in the world. And when we do not do this, it is as if this idea, this hand inside the glove, wants to manifest and the fingers are all trapped. It is a steel glove, and it is there, anguished, wanting to break through that resistance to deliver its message to the world. It is like a baby in a mother's womb. Can you imagine what it is like for a baby wanting to be born? The time has come, and this mother, trying, prevented it. Certainly, both will die. Is there within us this identity? There is this certain someone within you wanting to be born right now. And there comes a certain moment when he reaches a level of despair that causes terrible pain and emptiness and inner anguish that you don't know where it comes from. Many times, I do not like to generalize because that would not be philosophical, but I notice that not a year goes by without a new syndrome of something being created. Emptiness syndrome, this syndrome, psychological syndromes that cause some despair. I believe that many of them must be legitimate. But I think that even among those that are legitimate, there must be many that are. Your identity wanting to be born and you do not want to take the step. I suspect that behind many of these new illnesses that pop up all the time, there is your inner self, your true identity, wanting to be born and you not allowing it. This ends up killing both. It ends up making the anguish unbearable. It is incredible how we have a huge number of people feeling anguished every year, entering deadened corridors. It is incredible. Whatever name you give, it is a birth you are not allowing to happen. The birth of oneself. You were born in body, that you have not been born as an identity. You have owing to undergone that second birth. Just like the Eastern tradition said there are two deaths, there are also two births. And the second is to be born like your inner name, to be born as yourself. It is not simply the birth of a body, it is the birth of a soul, of an identity. From that which animates you, that genuinely moves you as a human being. This has many names nowadays. One thing I find interesting, which I wanted to share with you, is that every time you notice a small law, a simple thing that you look at and say, wow, how that makes sense. Do you realize it is like a bit of God's arm extended over the cosmos that you have touched? The Eastern traditions call it the Dharma of the arm of God, extended over the cosmos. In other words, when you realize that the universe has some meaning, that some event is trying to teach you something, that there is a logic in the things that happen, you have touched a piece of the Dharma, a piece of God's own. To perceive the order of the universe means that you are beginning to have the ability to integrate with it. It is an immensely valuable first step. You are no longer insecure. You are no longer lost in the midst of the chaotic universe. You have discovered a piece of the logos, a piece of the cosmos, and now you can integrate with it. There is nothing that gives you as much energy. I remember I have told you many times about this that I used to talk in one of my classes. In my classes, ideas are born that I later share with you, and they are born there at that moment from the honest demand of the people. It is very interesting. How is it that love, fraternity are so one of the elements that make us grow the most? By wanting to help someone, you end up diving deep within yourself, discovering incredible things that, on our own, we might not have had the motivation to find. And a very young student asked me what he could learn from things. Things are silent, they have nothing to teach you. I was telling them about the example of the chair, which I have often shared with you, that a chair is such an effective object because it combines the stability of its four legs on the ground with the generosity of being ready to welcome a weary traveler. And every time you combine stability and generosity, you create something tremendously efficient and timeless. I was talking about the stairway, which has a dimension of stability, rest, and height dimension. That is vertical, of challenges to be overcome so that you can move to another level. Eternal horizontality would not allow you to grow, and eternal verticality would leave you at the base of the wall with no way to climb. So, it is no wonder that it is the most effective way to propel you from one level to another. It gives you a time of stability and a time of challenge. And life is like that, it is like a stairway. And I kept adding a bunch of other examples. And it is interesting how this person was taken aback, looking at the chair, looking at the wall, looking at the stairway. Folks, are they saying all of this? Yes, they are. So, stop and observe that something that works is a conjunction of ideas. Not if you extract these ideas from it and apply them anywhere else, it also works. You begin to hold on to the arm of God. This gives you such firmness and security that you will never be lost in the midst of chaos again. You will never again feel like a castaway in the middle of the sea. Now I have a strong rope that ties me to solid ground. I am no longer a plaything in the hands of the tide or the wind. Now I have a direction. I am certain that the world is a cosmos. I am certain that there are laws, and therefore I can integrate myself with them. I have a safe harbor, and I am heading there. An experience like this already gives you that you are no longer a castaway. It is one of the things I always illustrate as well, which I find very beautiful when you notice a little bird with a worm and its nestling. You see that it takes flight with a clear goal, going to fetch a worm for its little nestlings. And it is impressive because sometimes a little sparrow, such a small bird, flies at a certain height, looks down, and sees the blessed worm moving. Folks, from a human perspective that is much lower than the bird is, it wouldn't see that worm. But it has a clear focus, it wants to bring food to its nestlings. And without focus, it does not miss a single small movement on the ground. The worm moved, and it sloops down, poof, got it. Notice that if we also walked around wanting to feed, not our nestlings, but our own soul, anything that moved around us would be nourishment. If we had focus, if we knew what we came here to do, if we knew who we need to feed, that from our life, we nourish everyone else. Do not forget that role from the flight attendant on the plane. Put your mask on first, then help the other passengers. First, find for yourself the nourishment for your soul. From there, you have the breath and the ability to set an example, the ability to show the way. But first and foremost, keep yourself alive, because otherwise you won't be able to help anyone. So, take flight like a bird that knows what it wants, which is to nourish its soul. So, the smallest movement, the smallest fact. All around you is nourishment for your soul. And when you start to find this logic in life, you have a solid ground to stand on, you have certainties, and can begin to walk in a much safer way. This ground that trembles beneath our feet, this terrible insecurity of not knowing the meaning of all this. This drains out our energy. Be a good observer of life, and it will give you a solid ground to stand on. And you will have the confidence to walk, looking towards the future. The moment we live in is the law of least effort. This is an incredible thing because we associate happiness with doing nothing. The less effort you make, the happier you are. All technology aims for humans to do a bunch of things with minimal effort. I have already told you about that TV commercial that I never forgot, where there was a boy lying on the couch and the advertiser said, the TV factory. We are working more and more so that you work less and must. In other words, the blessed boy just did this with his finger. With the remote control, and everything appeared there, everything changed, and that was happiness. I remember that one of these days, a very interesting person I met gave me an example. Don't I sound very funny? She said, look, Michelangelo already knew this when he painted the creation of Adam. Do you remember the creation of Adam? The painting where God is coming and touches Adam's finger or tries to touch it. Very curious, because God is a robust man, Michelangelo depicted a robust man. Carried by a host of angels with that tremendous effort, unbalanced, throwing himself downward, making an enormous effort to extend his finger to Adam. And Adam, who is half reclined on the ground, in the greatest comfort in the world, his fingers in this position, observe for yourselves. His effort to unite with God was just this, and he does not do it. He does not do it. He waits for God to come to him. She joked with me, saying, look, Michelangelo knew that man would be governed by the law of least effort, which is so little that we have to do. And we do not do it. We wait for things to come to us. And that is a very curious thing, to take this as happiness. If you consider that nature worked tremendously to evolve from the mineral kingdom, to develop it, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, to reach the human being who has all this brilliant capacity for imagination, creativity, intelligence, all these resources, to have inertia as happiness, which is the happiness of a stone. Gosh, what a waste of energy. Why do we make nature work so hard for so little? So, this issue of the law of least effort, it does not just lead to doing nothing, it leads to doing the easiest thing, and that is where it becomes more dangerous. So, in the realm of thought, for example, when something is presented to you, you have two possibilities. Either you deny it fanatically, without even having observed, chewed, and digested it, or you adhere to it fanatically. That is, either you fall into a discourse of hate, or you fall into idolatry and fanaticism. It is very rare to see people with the ability to reflect, with the ability to dissect and see the positive and negative aspects of things, which everything has. The universe is dual. The path of idolizing or rejecting and generating hate is a path of least mental effort. It is from those who did not chew, swallowed it whole, because chewing will allow you to separate the valid, assimilate the valid, and discard the rest. Because there are no absolutes in the manifested universe. So, all paths that blindly accept or blindly deny are mental laziness. And we live in the midst of this all the time. Chew things over. I always remember that phrase from Professor George Angel Livraga, the founder of New Acropolis, who used to say that a man does not live on what he eats, he lives on what he assimilates. And the rest is discarded by the body. Now, imagine if our body behaved like our mind, which does not dissect things, just swallows them whole. Would the body have to eliminate everything? How would it handle that? Or would it die from intoxication? Of course, what the body teaches us, dissecting, extracting the valid, and discarding the rest would be very useful for a mind. Nature knows what it is doing. The behavior of nature, as revealed in our biological self, is of an extraordinary intelligence. On the mental plane, our laziness, our lack of reflection generates dangerous polarizations of collective hatreds and collective passions without any kind of reflection, and who might not even know how to say or ponder why they hate or why they are passionate about something. And we live in the midst of this, not just in the US, but on a global scale. This is the result of laziness, of the law of least effort. Well, then we could start from a principle that is obvious, from the philosophical point of view. You have an ideal, which is the human ideal, and from there, you choose the appropriate tools to reach it. Choosing with discernment. And choosing, reflecting, is not simply thinking. It is also about experiencing these things and seeing how they work in practice. Imagine if I came up to you and said, it is impossible for a human to swim. Anything heavy that you throw into a pool will sink to the bottom, can't you see? A weight less than that of a human body will sink. So why does a human float and swim? And you never throw yourself into the water. You will believe me depending on how many titles I have, depending on how convincing I am, depending on the smooth talk I possess. Now, from the moment you decide to try, get into that pool. Try many times, endure the agony of not knowing how to do anything. One day, you learn to float and start dog paddling, which is the first swim stroke we do when we do not have an instructor. Get out of that pool. You walk down the street, meet me, and I tell you, it is impossible for a human to swim. Will I rob you of that experience? Definitely not. You have evidence, you lived it. The entire universe might come to you and say, no. You will say, yes, I lived it. Don't you find it strange that there were men in the past, a Galileo Galilei, a Giordano, the entire world telling them, no, there are not countless inhabited worlds as happened with Giordano. The Earth is the center of the solar system, as happened with Galileo. And they say, no. The whole world against them. How do they have the foundation to say no? They're Gahalmini. How do they have the foundation to defend an opinion contrary to everyone's view? In a massified world, no one would endure that. Where do they get that conviction from? A profound experience of things. They not only thought, but they devoted themselves to life. And they experienced this teaching. And from there, they gained evidence that no one can take away from them. The things that are not yours will be taken away by time, by massification, by your own insecurity. Strive to ensure that there are things that are truly yours, because nothing and no one can take that away from you. Not even death, according to some traditions, they say. So, it is an important reflection for us to make. What is truly mine? If humanity, 7 billion human beings, gathered in front of me and said no, what would I be capable of affirming? Yes, I have lived. It is incredible how almost everything can be taken away from people. Look at the smear campaigns that are carried out on the internet against people who were once more convinced. Soon enough, they are not anymore. It is incredible. Convictions are not founded on inner life. There is little root, so when winds, it uproots. And always, I repeat, it will always be windy. Neither deny nor blindly accept what you do not know. Examine and extract what is valid, as we have already discussed. In other words, a priori, neither denial nor acceptance. A posteriori, you select what is valid, the valid nourishment, and discard the rest, just as your body knows how to do. But it is annoying. We want to give quick answers. No one has to give quick answers. You have to give responsible answers. Because from your answers, other tendencies will emerge, which will influence other human beings, perhaps into the abyss as well. And much of the responsibility for these people falling into the abyss is yours, for you gave the direction. Therefore, we are not obligated to be faster than our reflections to provide answers. But approach life well and commit to what you offer to others. Do not be co-responsible for us all marching together into the abyss. That is not unity, that's a continuity of alienations, massification. Another important thing, do not reduce a human being into a label. Someone says, wonder he did such a thing to me, so today I don't even look at that person's face because he's bad. You are not the same as you were yesterday, or the day before, or last week, and you know it. And it would not be fair for someone to still be judging you today for something you did at 18 or 20 years old, depending on your current age. Of course, the human being is a work in progress. It is essential to have that freshness of looking at things as if it were the first time. Although you won't forget the past, give things a chance to change. Because if you do not, you won't even give yourself that chance. And things change, human beings are being dealt. Do not label, do not freeze, because that is cruel. With that person, you do not give them a chance to break free from the stereotype you have created and force them to remain in it. And it is not fair to you because you will apply the same treatment to yourself and won't allow yourself to grow. The cruelty applied to others will also be applied to ourselves. So do not freeze the image of people. Do not freeze the image of events. What happened, happened in the context of that moment. From then to now, there may have been learning, there may have been change, there may have been an awakening of consciousness. Because that is the natural course of things. Everything frozen is not natural. The natural course is for all beings to be walking and perfecting themselves on this journey. Give them a vote of confidence. Do not disregard the past, but do not judge based solely on it. We do this out of convenience too. In other words, we create a fixed image and do ONT reassess that situation. It is cruel, even to yourself. You won't trust yourself when you try to grow. The myth of Narcissus and Echo is interesting. I think some of you might be familiar with this Greek myth. The nymph Echo was in love with Narcissus, who was incredibly vain, indeed a very handsome young man. He would gaze at his reflection in the water, thinking he was marvelous. And since the nymph Echo lived nearby, she could not speak on her own. She could only echo. He would say things for her to repeat what he wanted to hear. So he would say, "Narcissus is beautiful." And Echo would repeat this countless times. "Narcissus is beautiful, Narcissus is beautiful, Narcissus is beautiful." Observe if you are not repeating things that feed vanity, self-interest, of others without any awareness of what you are saying. See if you are not the nymph Echo serving Narcissuses of questionable character, dubious interests, or uncertain levels of consciousness. So, it is important for us to know that this voice we echo must have had an originator at the beginning who is likely benefiting from it, but not us. And no one will compensate us for our own voice that we failed to express. That time has passed. The life given to us cannot be recovered. It does not come back. I spent X years of my life echoing and not choosing, not thinking, not discerning. No one is going to give that back to you. Do not be an echo of dubious interests. Think, do not echo. When will we start delivering our own message to the world? The Buddhist tradition, the Dhammapada, says that more than 1,000 meaningless words is worth a single word that brings comfort to the listener. Have you spoken your word yet? Where was? When? That word is essential to bring comfort to someone. It is not the definitive word, nor the most perfect in the world, but it is your word. And the world feels the absence of the silence because you haven't spoken your word yet. The world needs it, even if it is just a drop. The land is very barren. A drop falls well, it makes it less barren, and then something can grow. Do not hold back from delivering your message to the world by repeating things when you do not know who the sender is or what interest lies behind it. Epictetus used to say something that I find very interesting. Epictetus was a great logician and loved well-ordered thought, as did the Stoics in general. They all did. He used to say, "Protect your reason, and it will protect you." I am very impressed. When these phone scams arise, those crazy chain messages that sometimes circulate through society, they catch people regardless of their level of education. It is as if the intellectual information we receive does not generate any drop of maturity in our soul. Because people are tremendously unprepared for all kinds of deception and manipulation. There is no memory, no attention, no reflection. As I have mentioned to you many times, I had a grandmother who was illiterate, but she was a person with a sharpness I have never seen. No one could easily deceive her. In fact, I never saw anyone deceive her in any way. She was extremely simple, but extremely present in body and soul in the events of life. And sharp, mature, where has our sharpness gone? Where has our common sense gone? Where has our capability gone to preserve our descendant? Regardless of the number of years of schooling, which is more about information than formation, people are deceived by the bunch. Few are those who stop and say, "Wait a minute, let me think. This seems strange. This seems doubtful." So realize this, today there is no longer a clear relationship between information and formation. The law of least effort, it has turned school knowledge into something merely informative, merely quantitative, and not quality. And the number of years of schooling a person has had no longer means anything. It no longer indicates that they're a sharp and prepared person to perceive life's difficulties and prepared to find their own answers. It says nothing about that. He does not speak to that at all. So, no one is going to do the work of building yourself for you, especially because it is a historical moment where people are finding, all of them, a lot of difficulty in doing this. No one is going to take on this task for you. Do it or not, you will have it. Do it or die a stranger to yourself. I included a quote from Malor Fernandez that I find very funny, like everything the Lord says all his works. He used to say the following: democracy is when I boss you around. Tyranny is when you boss me around. I found this very interesting because you see that he is saying words have no meaning in themselves. They take on color depending on whether they serve my interest or not. What is democracy? What is tyranny? Let me see what interests me. If I boss you around, it is democracy. If you boss me around, it is tyranny. So be careful, we no longer know what we are talking about. Is looking like the biblical Tower of Babel. Everyone speaks a different language. Nothing is vertical will be built anymore. We no longer have a homogeneous language. Everything is tinged by our selfish interests. And we don't stop to think about the meaning of words we pronounce. In other words, there is no transmission of knowledge. If I do not know what I am saying, I do not know what the other person is receiving. How I will convey the best of myself if I do not have an adequate language filled with content. And I have not even found the best of myself. That is the problem. So we love people and want to give them something precious, that no one can take away from them. And we do not know how to convey this, or we have not even achieved it. Understanding the complexity of nature, that is fundamental. Do not live by the soap opera psychology where there are only feints and villains. The universe is multifaceted. We are, as Plato said, a mix of one and the other, the mix of light and shadow. Evolution is about trying to make the light prevail over the shadow. But absolutes, there are none. Do not judge people in absolute terms. This person had a bad moment on that day at that time. It does not mean that she is bad. She has positive things within her. And if you know these positive things, you can ally yourself with her in what she has that is positive and help her fight against what she has that is negative. Do not abandon this person when she lost a battle, but fight alongside her. Imagine, for example, the concept of loyalty. What would you think of a soccer team that starts losing on the field and the players start tearing off their jerseys and leaving because they do not play for a losing team? What would you think of an athlete like that? Disloyal, infamous, not worthy of competing for a team, no one would accept him anymore. In other words, do not turn your back on a friend when they are losing the game. Consider that he is light, remember that light, and help him remember the light when he is engulfed by shadows. If we were not just accomplices, but truly friends, we would work in favor of each other's light, in such a way that I would know when I fall into darkness, I can count on you to rescue me, to throw the rope, to pull me up. This is the true concept of friendship. The person is having a hard time, you treat them not as that moment, but as the best you know them. It is as if you had split her in half. Here is a whiny, stubborn, and complicated child. And here is a human being you know. Talk to him. And how can strengthen himself and manage that troublesome child? So do not believe that you will find good guys and bad guys, because you are not like that either. Think about the facts of your life, the best things you have done. Were not good tainted by some kind of interest, vanity? There are no absolutes. The worst things you have done, weren't they tainted with some good intention? Misunderstood. Nothing is absolute. If we cannot find this within ourselves, why would we find it in others? Aligning with the light is necessary. Do not believe that the other is absolutely bad or absolutely good. This only generates hatred and passions, idolatry, and fanaticism. Do not become fanaticized, be yourself. I remind you of something I always say, but few. Few are willing to do this because there is a certain prejudice, even in Brazil, which is the work of Machado de Assis. We encounter this in our teenage years, perhaps unprepared to engage with such a profound work, and sometimes we carry a rejection of it for the rest of our lives. I got tired of meeting people who tell me I do not like Machado de Assis. Folks, this is a terrible waste because Machado de Assis was not just a writer, he was a philosopher. He has wonderful works. And there is a short story of his that I particularly recommend to you. It is in the public domain called The Church of the Devil. In a very simplified summary, which is very intelligent and creative, the devil asks God to give him a chance to tempt all his followers on earth without suffering any consequences, no punishment, to see who would remain faithful to good without gaining anything, and who would turn to evil, knowing they would not be punished for anything. Then God gave him the opportunity to conduct his test. He went out dragging crowds with his church, where everyone did only what they wanted. All vices are idolized, everything is considered wonderful, and virtues are completely forbidden. That church of his becomes monumental. But after some time, the devil starts to notice that his main priests secretly are doing good deeds, performing little acts of charity and hide him when no one is watching. They are there, helping an animal, helping a person in secret so no one would see, and he is horrified by it. I am being betrayed. Then he goes to complain to God. Then God turns to him and says, "What do you want, my poor devil? Before, we had a humanity of velvet with a fringe of cotton. Now you have a humanity of cotton with the fringe of velvet." It is the eternal inconsistency of human beings. In other words, whenever you find a velvet cloak, look closely, there is a fringe of cotton. It is the eternal inconsistency of human beings. The universe is dual, and we are part of it. Value the luminous and do not expect perfection from anyone. Remember, everything we place as expectations on others, when turned on to ourselves, can destroy us. If we demand something absolute from ourselves, we will not endure that level of pressure because we do not have it. Therefore, do not be cruel. The kana of cruelty is something very heavy. To live and what live. What does this expression mean? Do not impose ideas on others, invite reflection, but also do not accept others imposing ideas on you. Know how to be discreet, sober, but set boundaries. Do not allow others push ready-made ideas onto you, just as you should not do to others. Do not forget that respect for others is practiced through respect for oneself. Otherwise, it is not respect, it is an imposition. That when you can act with impunity, you end up oppressing the other. If respect for others is not grounded in self-respect, it does not exist. It is just a mask. It is a moral custom and not a moral conscience. Remember, always, these two things are very different. One is in their habit, and the other is a level of consciousness that does not yield to anything. The concept of pax, the philosophical piece for the Romans, was to always be accompanied by oneself, mind, and body together, at peace with your conscience and with heaven and earth, with your principles and their application to the world, with a spirit of continuous improvement that never believing you hold the ultimate truth. This sobriety is responsible for the construction of oneself. Do not invade the space of others, but always offer what you have that is best. And do not let others invade you. In other words, this necessary dignity to uphold our identity in the world. That is what nature expects from you. And if humanity had the awareness to say what it expects from you, it would unanimously proclaim it to the four corners of the world. Be more human, because I need to see what that looks like. I need to see how it works. If human beings were awake, if they could ask for something without a doubt, they would ask, be more human, be more yourself. Well, some traditions speak of, although I am not quite sure if this is real or just a rumor, but they talk about ancient peoples who believed that the stars were the gathering of the gods, who placed a cloth so that men would not see them. And this cloth had little holes, and that is how the light of the gods appeared, and they were stars. I imagine in the story, which I do not know how well founded it is, that it is a good example, how much I would like to open more little holes. A match sheet so that this light from the realm of ideas could illuminate the earth more permanently, if possible. And that is our mission. Do not forget, do not lose focus. A good player cannot lose focus on the net, the ball, the goal. Otherwise, he will never get there. Do not lose focus. We are here to poke holes in that sheet, allowing more of the light from the realm of ideas to reach the world through our small efforts. A small hole we open is one more star in the sky. And the world needs more stars because the darkness grows ever deeper. Our ideas are stars, and they are a gift to an increasingly dark world. Well, finally, I brought you a poem, if you will allow me, one of my own. A time when I was reading a book called Viveka Shudamani by an Indian sage. From Vedanta Shankaracharya, I wrote a poem for him, a poem about a concept he has, Ananda Maya Kosha. I brought an excerpt from this poem, and I would like to read it to you because it ties in perfectly with everything we've talked about so far. Pay attention. I will fly over the world like a bird and hunt, seeking the bricks of my home of mine. Whenever the soul remembers it has wings, there I will be, hunting attentively, all beautiful. Whenever you, in sealing a pact, becomes a link. Whenever your hand forges rock crystal, whenever your voice reignites the torch, you will provide bricks for the house which you long for. Whenever pure gold reveals its vein in the open heart of an awakened human, there my soul will be builder, alert, in search of the foundations that labor demands. Whenever the eternal human gene expands in inspired, strong, and ideal voices, bold by invoking God on your path with such emphasis that God Himself answers, there I will have my precious materials. And the poem goes on. This is just an excerpt. But the idea is this of the human genius, which is capable of creating spaces for the lights of the realm of ideas to reach the world. And they provide materials to those who came before us so that we can build our own house, our own identity, which Sankaracharya called Ananda Maya Kosha. Well, these are just some reflections. I hope they're useful to you. These are not absolute truths. They are ideas for you to take, ponder, as my grandmother used to say, digest them, assimilate what is necessary, and discard what you find irrelevant. But do not refuse this invitation. Gild yourself. Take the reins of your own thoughts, of your own emotions, of your own life. To die